In the end, the measure of our faith will be determined by one factor, principally: who we chose to love more in this life, God or ourselves. Fulton Sheen once said, "There are two kinds of people in this world: those who love God to the point of despising themselves, and those who love themselves even to the point of despising God." Why is that? Because who we love more will determine everything that we do in life, what we do and what we do not do, what we say and what we refuse to say, what we believe and what we deny. All of this will be determined by who we choose to love more in life, God or ourselves. In today's gospel, a very sad, almost a laughable situation comes up, where Jesus Christ is sharing the pain of the suffering he is going to endure, telling his disciples he is going to die. In the gospel, it's very interesting. It uses two words. It says he was telling them and teaching them about his death. Both of those verbs are the imperfect form, meaning he was telling them over and over and over again, the Son of Man will be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And what was their response? They were silent. And later they were found arguing amongst one another on who among them was the greatest. It's almost unbelievable. They're so caught up in their own image, in their own status, that they refuse to acknowledge and to share in the suffering that Christ is offering to them. It's like when you go to somebody and you're going through something really difficult, and you open that up to somebody else, and all of a sudden they start talking about themselves. It's like they missed the whole point. And that's why when Calvary came, only 1 out of 12 disciples followed him to the cross. 1 out of 12. Love, when it is real, must take us to the cross, to self-transcendence, to die to myself for the sake of the one that I love. That's what every single crucifix proclaims. Jesus dying to himself for us, his beloved. And that's why the opposite of self-transcendence, of true love, is self-preservation. To preserve myself, my image, my ego, rather than to transcend it for the sake of the one I love. And that is a crossroads we all come to in our own hearts in life. To choose between the path of self-transcendence or self-preservation. To love God to the point of abandoning my ego, or to love myself to the point of abandoning God. Why didn't the disciples stay with Christ when he was betrayed, arrested, publicly mocked and crucified? Because they loved themselves more than they loved him. So they protected themselves when the opposition came. It's as simple as that. 11 out of 12 left him. And this is not, it would be easy if this was just a story in the gospel about some instance that just happened long ago to some people at one time. It's not. It's a warning for every single one of us. That so deep is our instinct for self-preservation that 91% of us, when faced with opposition, will choose to protect ourselves, to abandon Christ so as to preserve ourselves, our reputations, our jobs, our friends, our money, our comfortable life, And if we really want to be honest about it, that's one of the principal reasons that the sex abuse crisis became so big amongst bishops and priests in the United States and in many other places. Even though it was only 4% of priests, if not less, than were even accused of predatory behavior. It was the fact that those priests and bishops who could have done something when they saw the evil were silent. They were more concerned with self-preservation than self-transcendence. They loved themselves too much, so they didn't speak the truth when they saw it. And that's when the desires of the wicked spread, when the good are silent, too afraid to speak up. It reminds me of, there's a famous poem by Keats called The Second Coming. It says, "The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is being drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with a passionate intensity. Surely the second coming is at hand." I look at our country and I see a passionate intensity in the media. They're not in the middle ground. It's a passionate intensity to promote every vice that is contrary to our faith. I look at men and I see a passionate intensity for ESPN and fantasy football. I look at our politics. There's a passionate intensity about whatever's going on in the White House and the presidents. But then we come to church 1 hour a week, and it seems as though we who carry the greatest treasure on this earth, which is the truth, lack all conviction. And it's for that reason that when we are faced with opposition, so often we are silent. Abraham Lincoln once said, "To sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men." And that's why Shakespeare concluded, "A coward dies 1,000 times before his death, while the valiant taste of death but once." Why? Because every single time we fail to stand up, to speak the truth, when we know that something is wrong, something within us dies. Another branch is disconnected from the vine of our soul, and we become dead wood, just floating along when the blood-dimmed tide is loosed. And that is when the wicked become strong, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Because the good care more about self-preservation than self-transcendence. They love God, but not as much as they love themselves. So they refuse to go to the cross, to suffer with Christ, by standing up against evil when they see it. This was true for the disciples in the gospel, and it's true for us today. How many times has someone attacked our faith or our morality? And out of fear, for the sake of self-preservation, we remain silent and we say nothing. Whether it be in our workplace, in our homes, amongst friends. Jesus Christ is still being handed over today because the truth is still being crucified today. And we are all tempted, like the apostles were today, to be more concerned about our own well-being than protecting Christ. What we need, what we must pray for and beg God for, is more love for Jesus Christ, more intimacy with Jesus Christ, so that we might seek more ardently for the approval of the Son of Man rather than the sons of men. We want to please those whom we love. If we spend more time with other human beings than we do with God, we will want to please those human beings more than God. Jesus is still being handed over. And in one moment, He's going to be handed over to all of you in the Holy Eucharist, body and blood. Every Mass that we come to is a self-transcendence of God, pouring Himself out for us on the altar to give Himself to us. And every day of our life, in return, must be a self-transcendence for God, whatever that might cost us. When you receive Him in the Eucharist, remain with Him. Listen to Him. Let Him share the pain that He's going through with you. Let Him speak to you about His passion, and you will be filled with a passionate intensity to protect Him, to stay with Him even when you walk outside these doors, to transcend your own ego and desire for self-preservation, and to love Him more than anything and anyone on this earth, even ourselves.